Hello and welcome to another episode of our Brothers Creed podcast,
where we inspire fathers to build the blueprint for the next generation.
We are the Thomas Brothers. I'm Jared.
And I'm Ethan. Hello and welcome to another episode of a Brothers Creed podcast, where we inspire fathers to build the blueprint for the next generation. We are the Thomas Brothers. I'm Ethan.
And I'm Jared. And we are happy to be with you today, talking to you about an exciting new series that we're going to be doing. Over the next 3 episodes, we're going to be talking about resilience. One of the things we've talked about as fathers is the importance to model these things, but also to teach these things to our kids. And resilience is one of the best things that you can teach. World's not all sunshine and rainbows, as Rocky would say. And so it's important to learn how to be resilient. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start talking about mental resilience. And then the next episode, we're going to talk about physical resilience. And then, like David Goggins says, who's going to carry the boats, And then we're going to talk about, and then our last episode, what we're going to do is we're going to bring components of these together, and we're going to share some movie clips that we believe encapsulate some of these different attributes of both mental and physical resilience, and we'll talk about those. We love sharing those. we did that on the last episode, on the last series we did about fatherhood. Yeah. We share some great ones.
Yeah, and you can get so much out of like even a short movie clip, just a couple a minute movie clip. There's so much like emotion and story in those. So to kick it off, I want to just talk about resilience in general, right? What is resilience? I think there's a couple different names for resilience, and we've probably actually done episodes on grit and toughness and things like that. And we've probably even referenced resilience at some point in the several hundred episodes that we've done. But resilience is, from the Webster Dictionary, right? The capacity to adapt, recover, and grow stronger in the face of adversity, challenges, or significant stress. Mm-hmm. Now, this was kind of let's say a neutered version a little bit, because it didn't really specify whether it was talking about mental resilience or physical resilience. So as Jared said, we're going to kind of be exploring those topics over the next couple episodes. And it's interesting how close they might be related and interconnected. So I think there's kind of 3 main...
Well,
go ahead.
Before you jump into that, I just want to say one thing about the definition of resilience, right? So resilience, there's kind of 2 components to that. Well, it's just like, one is how you respond, but the main thing of resilience is there has to be a struggle. Being resilient doesn't mean you're never feeling stressed or you're never having struggles. In fact, to be resilient, you have to go through difficulties. And so but the whole point is being tough and going through those, being able to, having the capacity to recover, adapt, and even grow through those challenges. So as far as like defining what that means, a critical component of being resilient, if that's a virtue that you want, you better put on your big boy pants, because you got some adversity coming your way because you can't, there's no other way to learn resilience other than to go through those tough times and to have the capacity to withstand, overcome, adapt through those. So yeah, I want to insert that little piece I had.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction, right? Resilience, in my mind, when I sat down and was kind of doing some of my research, I was like, oh man, some people that are just positive all the time, a go-getter attitude, right? It's like, well, resilience is not all about being unaffected by hardship. It's not about just, being stoicism or pretending that everything is fine all the time, being a super optimist. It's more about feeling the weight of a situation or whatever is going on, bending, under that weight if needed and still finding a way forward and almost becoming um, accustomed to that stress is kind of resilience. Yeah, so I don't think there can be resilience without that implementation of kind of an initial catalyst of stress or challenge or adversity.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree.
So, well, do we want to just kind of
Well, yeah,
kick
I had
off
some
and
yeah.
anything else on just general resilience?
No, I kind of had a couple points that I was thinking about would be the fundamentals of mental resiliency.
Okay.
And this is kind of like mental resiliency sits upon these as a foundation. And you would love to hear your feedback on any of these. The first one I think is being self-aware, right? You can't know when it's time to toughen up or when it's time to be resilient if you don't even know that you're in the fire or you're in the heat. So think about being self-aware as a kind of like a dashboard to know. Like think about an athlete who knows they're getting overheated, who knows they're pushing their limits, and they need to adapt and change so that they can continue and continue to fight for the long haul. And so being self-aware, I think, is a major piece to know when you're in the thick of things. That's if you're not self-aware, you're not going to cognitively think through things and say, okay, how can I adapt? How can I overcome? Because you're just going to be oblivious. So I think one of the fundamental foundations of this is self-awareness. The next one is emotional regulation. So this one, resilience isn't necessarily about, it's not the absence of emotion, like you said. It's not that stoic, oh, nothing affects me. It's the ability to manage emotions so that they serve you and not control you. And so that's one of those, having the capability and capacity to use those emotions to your benefit when it's a stressful situation. Like think about it, a firefighter or a first responder or EMT, someone who's in these tough situations, and they use this fuel or the emotion of their fuel to complete the task at hand. The next one I had is cognitive flexibility. So this just is your ability to think about what else you could do. Plans oftentimes fail. What is it that Mike Tyson said? Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face.
Yep.
I think which was a requote from an ancient Chinese art of war thing that said everybody has a plan going into battle until the first shot is fired or something like that, or first spear is thrown, maybe if it's an ancient Chinese fight. Yeah. But having cognitive flexibility really lets you reframe problems, pivot to different strategies, and see new opportunities in the heat of the situation. So that's one that's pivotal to this. And then there's three other ones. Having an overarching why. Why am I doing this, right? If you're going through a tough time, let's just say you're had a career. I always want to relate this back to what's going on in our own lives and how we can model this for our own kids. If you have a major career upset or a health scare or something is going on with one of your kids, remembering what your why is, what purpose, and we've talked about knowing your why, or what reason do you wake up in the morning, what marches you forward every day, whether that be a purpose or a goal that you have in life, or your kids, or your wife, or just for yourself, or for your spouse, or for the banner of heaven, or whatever reason it is that you get out of bed and do these things. Keeping that in mind will help you. So if and I know I was gonna hopefully today, Ethan, you could talk a little bit about the resilience that you've shown with some career changes that you've had in your life. And I know you've talked about that previously on the episode, but I wanted to maybe call that out just to say that you've been resilient in that you've had this, you were on a track, and I'll let you explain it, but why don't you go ahead and just kind of explain that situation? I'd love to highlight that right now.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. And thank you for calling me resilient. I appreciate it. So, and we have talked about this before, but I graduated college with a business degree. Um, and got my first job out of college and moved to California, which was about as far as away you could go in the continental United States to home as I was used to. But was working and just felt like I wasn't meeting my 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 goals of what I wanted out of life. I felt like my trajectory was just not where I wanted it to be. I was at a point where, in college or even in high school, I had this thought of, well, I want to either, go medical or business. And I was kind of leaning towards medical fields and stuff like that, but I ended up going business. I don't know what changed in me. I felt like I could make more money or it was easier. I don't know. Um, but as I was out working, out of college, I was married and had one child at this point. I kind of had this epiphany of where do I want, I was mid 20s. I said, what do I want? What direction do I want to take my life? And I decided, well, I think I'm going to go back to school, get a biology degree, and start applying for dental schools. That's what I want to do. I did a bunch of research. I talked to several people that were in dental school and had just graduated dentists and things like that. And I was just like, I was sold. I prayed about it and felt like it was the right thing to do. And so I uprooted my family and moved back east to North Carolina where I could get in-state tuition at one of the local colleges and started going to school again. And I went down that path for several years, took, starting basically from scratch, from ground zero. Um, and it was tough. And there were some people that said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. Do you know how hard that's going to be? Do you know do you know what the acceptance rates into dental school are for a middle-aged white male?" And I was just like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And I went down that path, and I went down that path hard with everything I had. And I was going to school full time. I was working when I wasn't at school or studying. I was working, trying to make money to survive for the family. And you know what? It didn't work out. There was years and thousands of dollars and lost time that I had dedicated to this endeavor, and it didn't work out. I applied and had some interviews at dental schools and went through the whole process, passed my classes and everything, but didn't get in. And that was hard. That was really hard. I struggled with that. I struggled with it for a long time. Um, but then I kind of dug in and, it reminded me of a story of a grandpa and a son that were driving their truck through the desert on a dirt road, and they got lost. And so they were driving down this dirt road, trying to remember the path back to the main road. And they came to a fork in the road, and they prayed to determine which way do we go. Do we go left or do we go right at the fork? And they felt a very, very strong impression to go right. And so they looked at each other and they said, "All right, I think we should definitely go right. Going right is the direction we should go." And so they turned right and they went down that road, maybe 300 yards, and that road dead ended. And they said, "Oh, okay. Well, let's," turned around, headed back to the fork in the road, and they took the left way, and that led them all the way back out to the road. And so looking back at that, that was kind of a story that it was like, how does that relate to my situation? Sometimes you go down a path and you feel that it's the right path. You feel that it's what you want to do. In your bones, you're like, this is exactly what I want to do. Um, and then it dead ends, and you're like, huh, that's not how I expected that to go. But at least I know what was down that path. At least I know that was not the right direction to go. Now I'm not gonna, if they would have to went the other way, they could have gotten 2 or 3 miles down the road and been like, "Oh, are we going on the right road? Should we have taken the other road? I don't know. We're so confused." And then they get an hour down the road before they hit the main highway, and they just don't know, right? There's just living in confusion and doubt. But whenever they went back to the other way, they knew, hey, this is the only other way out. And so that's kind of how I felt. That's how I rationalized it in my mind, right? That I'm just
Yeah.
like, this is it was it will all be for your experience. And you know what? I can't say that it I can't I can't say that it hurt me more than helped me. I don't know. I'm still trying to figure all that out.
Yeah.
But, I'm happy, healthy, got an awesome family and people that love me and support me and working hard and you know, ended up landing an awesome job, several awesome jobs in different industries within business and found something that I really enjoyed. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I
I
think
mean,
you can.
that's no, I love that story because it shows a lot of flexibility when you come up against a difficult situation. You're trying to do something, and then maybe there's just you tried multiple times to take these tests. They're to get into these schools. Some of these dominoes weren't falling into place. So it's like, okay, how do I have this cognitive flexibility? How do I pivot strategies here? I got a family. Well, remember what your why is. Well, I got a family to provide for. At this point, you at least had one, maybe two kids. And it's like, I got to pivot here and do something else because this situation is not working out. And so having that flexibility and being able to work through that is resilient. And I think that, talking more on like the destiny side of things, like, well, I coulda, woulda, shoulda. There's a story from, I like some of the stuff that Gary Vee says. I think Gary Vee thinks a lot
he's
of
got
himself. He thinks that everything he says is like the best thing that was ever said. But one thing I do appreciate that he said was, he said, someone asked me once if I think he had the opportunity to invest in YouTube early on, and he didn't, or some giant company that went buku crazy. It was either YouTube or Uber, one of those that he had the opportunity to invest in, but he didn't, and he would have made billions with his early investment. And someone's like, "Do you ever regret not investing in, let's say, YouTube?" And he's like, "No, I don't, because I like where I'm at now, and I'm doing great things now. And the situation that I have now, I'm alive, I'm happy, I'm healthy, I've got a family, I've got this business." And he's like, if I had invested in YouTube, maybe I would have been, maybe I would have been hit by a bus, getting off a bus 20 years ago or 15 years ago, and maybe I
The
would be dead
butterfly
by now.
effect.
Yeah. So it's like, who knows what would happen? Maybe if you had gotten into dental school, you would have maybe it would have made your whole life way worse. Not worse, but maybe it would have gone down a path that was just like not where you wanted to be.
Yeah,
And so
potentially could have strained my marriage more, or
and so
I wanted to. I was really interested in going the path of military. Maybe I would have extremely disliked that. It's like there's
so there's always like ways that we sometimes we look back, we think, oh, maybe this, maybe that, but like maybe you could have got shot. Maybe, the first day at dental school, you walk in there and you have a heart attack, or you're like, man, this is awful. The teacher hates me, and and it's miserable the whole time. And you're like, and then they said, first thing I think I said, maybe I was one of those early on, like, are you sure about that? Because you're like, oh, they go to be a dentist, and I was like, out of concern for you, I was like, don't dentists have the highest statistical suicide rate of any profession? And you're like, oh, shoot, I didn't know that. I was like, oh, don't do it, man.
Yeah.
I need you around.
That and being somewhat colorblind, I was told that really wouldn't make that big of a difference and that big of a deal. But as I got further into it, I think that would have been a bigger deal than I expected it to be.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
Not that I could have done it. I mean, but
Yeah. Nurse, is that blood or is that green ooze on my finger?
yeah,
that's blood. Oh, okay.
that's why you have dental. That's right. I don't know.
That's why I did it.
And now I can tell, when my wife is like, oh, what do you think about this? Or the kid's sick or whatever. And I'll just be like, hey, trust me, I was almost a doctor. That's what I tell her.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of taking that back to, my definition of mental resilience as compared to kind of the definition of just resilience in general that we talked about. Was the mind's ability to remain clear, flexible, like you talked about, Jared, and purposeful, with that why, when life feels chaotic or uncertain. It's not about constant positive thinking at all costs or about kind of that realistic optimism, or it is more about realistic optimism of like seeing challenges as problems to be solved rather than like things to just make you suffer. It's like having that flexibility and being able to problem solve. I think if people can see a situation and not see it as it almost kind of going through it as I was thinking about it, as I was doing my research, there was these things that popped up they're called mindset shifts.
Okay.
Mindset shifts that fuel resilience. And it gave some examples that I kind of dug into, but a mentally resilient person replaces the question, why me with, what now? Or, kind of you transition, you have the mental shift from, oh, I failed to I found one way that doesn't work. Or maybe another one from I'm stuck to, well, I just haven't found the right way yet. And so, this kind of keeps the door open to possibilities and progress. And it kind of normalizes setbacks to say like, yeah, I failed, but everybody fails at something. And you just haven't found the right way through it. And so those were kind of interesting. That they're almost like shifts that turn your brain from passive suffering into like this, active problem solving. And I think that is how you become resilient, to know that, hey, I'm in this situation. I feel this way, but I can move past this. I can do better, get stronger, whatever it might be. So I like those mindset shifts.
Yeah, one of those mindset shifts that I have, and I've talked about this before, but one of the quotes that I live by, or you could say a piece of my personal creed, is about resilience. And and I think I've showed it before, there's a poster in my office that says, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And so I think about that a lot. And it's like whenever, like for, like, dealing with someone who's been difficult at work, right? And it's like, man, this is difficult. This is annoying. I don't like this. Or maybe your kid's dealing with someone who's difficult at school. And then thinking about, well, this is a great opportunity for you to learn how to deal with difficult people. Think about it like that. Build your own skill. Use this as an opportunity to build your skill set. And if you view it like that, it's a lot more manageable. Now, that's a lot easier said than done than like, oh, I have stage 4 cancer. This is an opportunity for me to build my, resilience. In some cases, or like, oh, my child or my spouse just died. Oh, this is an opportunity for me. Obviously that's a lot easier said and done. In some cases, uh, it's a lot harder. But I think in a lot of those cases, even then, you talk to someone who is a cancer survivor, and they're like, "Yeah, I battled through this." In fact, I saw a clip today on. You ever watch the show Vikings?
Yeah.
If you've seen Vikings, there's a part in it where the guy's like, I'm gonna be drinking from curved horned
Curved
ales
horns.
and Valhalla today, and I summon the Valkyries, and I welcome the Valkyries that come to summon me. And I was like just flipping through it, and it was like, yeah, a lot of times, I was like, well, how do you get into Valhalla, right? The famed, and it's like, well, anybody who dies in battle. But it was like, it's taken on like a modern culture thing where like anybody who battles something, and it was saying even people who like, battle cancer or battle, health problems and beat that, identify as being a warrior. And so I even with those types of situations, I think like, yeah, those people are warriors. Like they are fighting this sickness or the illness within them. And so I would absolutely agree that they do grow from that. I mean, if you're a warrior, you're fighting and you're
Yeah.
gaining experience that a lot of times people will go back and they'll help other people with going through those same diagnoses because they know what it's like. They've been through that. And that's that skilled sailor coming out of them from being through those situations. So that's that resilience.
Yeah. A story that I had, and this is, I kind of flashed into my mind a book that I read in high school, that was called Left for Dead. So the whole is called Left for Dead: My Journey Home from Everest, and it's a true story by the author Beck Weathers, and it's a true story about this guy, Beck Weathers, and in May of 1996, it was considered he was climbing Mount Everest, and this was considered one of the deadliest Everest expeditions ever. And so as he was climbing up, they got hit by a massive storm while in the death zone. Um, and they got separated and all this different kind of stuff. And he got hurt. He like hurt his leg. I can't remember all the details, so there might be some creative liberties here. But I think he hurt his leg, and they basically the group basically left him for dead because it was in the middle of a raging blizzard. Temperatures were plunging and everything was freezing, and they just left him. And so, because it was either leave him or he was going to die, or they were going to all die. And so they left him. And after like 18 hours of exposure in this storm, he was trying to make his way down Everest by himself. And he ended up kind of hooking up with a second group of climbers that were also hiking down. And he kind of grouped up with them for a little bit, but he was slowing them down so much that they left him too. And so
Wow.
he basically got, rescued, and then they left him again. He ended up kind of rolling off of a rock embankment and a cliff thing, and his hand was frozen, and in the book he called it a wooden claw, because basically his hand was just like frozen.
Jeez.
He had frostbite all over his face, and hands and feet, obviously. But he just kept heading downhill. Basically, he was like, if I just head down as much as I can, I'm bound to run into somebody. And so he just, kept going down and down and down. Um, and eventually, after I think he had like a broken leg and a broken arm and all this frostbite and everything, he was crawling. He felt like it kind of planed out a little bit. and he was crawling, and then he all of a sudden like smelt this like really bad like feces smell. And he's like, "What the heck is that?" And then he realized that he was crawling through like a basically a latrine or where people would go to the bathroom. And he was like in his mind, this was after like almost 18 hours of exposure and hallucinations and everything else. And he realized, oh, I must be close to base camp if I'm like crawling through where people are going to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And so that kind of gave him like this mental jolt, and he ended up crawling into base camp, where kind of hooked back up with the team and everything, and they did a high altitude rescue helicopter evacuation and all this sort of kind of stuff. But I remember reading the book, and I was just like, dude,
Dang.
man, this guy, he would not die. He just like would not give up. And I said at the beginning how it kind of the lines between mental and physical resilience sometimes can be blurry.
Mhm.
But if I just look at this from like a mental perspective, he had the mental resilience to kind of override his physical limitations, and the pain that he was feeling. He kind of had just I remember in the book he would talk about like that next step, one more step, and he just had this like ruthless desire of like just one more inch, one more inch. And he would look up and kind of see a rock, and he'd say, "Oh, I'm just going to crawl to that rock and then to the next rock." So just that focus on the next step, acceptance of his situation. I mean, he's like, he knew he was in a bad spot, and he didn't surrender. He's like, man, this is bad.
Yeah, yeah.
But if I stop crawling, then I'm just gonna die. And then kind of lastly is finding his purpose. I remember he had these flashbacks in the book of his family and his parents and just his loved ones, and then he wanted to see him again, and that kind of gave him that resilience, that mental fortitude to just keep going. And so, whenever we're just talking about resilience, I was like, man, I remember that book. That was good.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned in there was something I also wanted to talk about was that that mindset of setting micro challenges or micro goals. That's something that, from what I've read, is they teach the Navy SEALs how to get through difficult situations by making micro challenges or micro goals. Just taking small things and like. There was one guy that was reading an article about it. He said, when I was in training in the BUDS, I think they call it, he said, I just wanted to make it to lunch. And then after that, I just wanted to make it to dinner. And it's like, kind of like you said, the guy was just like, I'll make it to that rock and then I'll die. And then he's like, oh, maybe just one more rock. It's just like by making these small challenges, it really helps you devour that entire elephant just one bite at a time. Otherwise, it's just too overwhelming to your senses. He's like, I've got to get off this entire mountain by myself. Oh my gosh. And then he just well, I might as well just give up now, And so that can be applied in so many different ways, especially with children. I feel like there's a lot of times my kids will feel overwhelmed at the tasks that I've given them. And I'm just like, you know what? A great way to do this is write out what the task is. Break it down into the most smallest components. It's like, you need to clean the bathroom, son. Okay, well, oh, this is so much. It's a lot. I was like, okay, well, write down every single component of that bathroom. First, you've got to wipe off the countertop. And then you've got to clean the mirror. And like write these down on a checklist. And then you've got to clean the toilet. And then you've got to sweep the floor. And then you got to mop the floor. And then you got to, make sure that the trashes are changed out. And so it gives you micro little goals. It's like, okay, well, changing the trash out, I can do that. And then once you do that, you cross it off the list. Something about crossing things off a list is very therapeutic to me. So sometimes at work, I will do this. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to write this giant SQL query that is massive and really complex. I've been working on one thing I've been working on for like 3 weeks, and it just is so massive. And finally today, I was just like, I broke through and I figured out what one of the problems were. But breaking things down like that, and then you cross them off the list, and then by the end, you're like, okay, actually, I was able to do that, and it wasn't just so overwhelming all at one time. And it allows you to focus in too on specific tasks. So that is something that I would say is absolutely applicable to anybody who wants to build that resilience and kind of that goal setting. Those kind of are overlapping and a way to keep going to what you want to achieve.
Yeah. I love it. There's one last story that I felt was super interesting when it comes to mental resilience. And it's almost like in the face of potential major consequences. And there's a guy named Jeremiah Denton, and this was during the Vietnam War. And he was a Navy pilot that was held captive for 8 years. And he was forced to basically read or do like a propaganda interview that was televised to the world. And during this propaganda interview, he agreed to it or whatever. And it was like very scripted, like he had to memorize a script of, oh, we are doing fine. We are happy. We are healthy or whatever it might be. And they, during the interview, he obviously knew Morse code. And during the interview, he actually blinked the word torture in Morse code, kind of as a secret communication to anyone that was watching in the outside world.
Really?
I don't know if you've seen that video before.
I don't think I have.
But yeah, it's interesting. He's talking and he's like blinking in like Morse code. Basically, he blinked torture in Morse code as he was
Dang.
talking. And so,
I'd have to practice doing that.
Seriously.
Talking and doing that. Yeah.
And so just the mental resilience of like, if I get caught doing this, they could kill me. They could continue to torture me. I mean, he was already he had been a POW for 8 years. And so, it was for him, it was, hey, I'm going to do this for me, for the people I'm in here with, for, at all costs. I'm going to try to get a message to the outside world. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. Even under extreme conditions and control, you can find a way to resist and kind of keep your integrity and keep your that fire in the eye of the tiger.
Is that when after that, did they go get Rambo and have him go in and save those guys?
Yeah, that's actually the next, part 2 of the movie.
Gosh, man, hopefully they rescued him out of there.
Yeah, I think they ended up getting out. But kind of crazy. But I agree with you,
that's wild.
Relating this back to the theme of the podcast of, building the blueprint for the next generation. As I was thinking through this, my boys were talking, and they've been waking up early with me and going to work out at 5:30 in the morning. And the other morning, they're like, oh, we're kind of tired and everything else. And I was like, oh, well, you don't want to go and work out? And they're like, no, we want to go. We want to go. We want to get stronger. And so, it's just like, I think telling them these types of stories and exposing them to things. I'm reading the Hatchet series with my 2 older boys, and we're on like the 4th book in the series. And
I didn't know there was 4. There's more than one book. Just the Hatchet.
Yeah, so there's the original Hatchet book, and then
that
there's
one,
the next one that's called Brian's Winter, or no, that's called The River. Basically, a reporter, he goes back with the reporter to kind of tell him this is what happened. This is what I went through, and then all this bad stuff happened. And then the third one was called Brian's Winter, which basically it's like a continuation of Hatchet if he would not have been saved at the end
Oh,
of Hatchet.
okay.
Spoiler alert. Um, and then the next one is Brian's Hunt, and then which is the one we're going to start reading, and I think there's one more after that.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, it's been really cool. I've been able to like I read it to them, and so we do like a chapter a night, and we'll lay down there and I'll be reading to them and stuff, and then we'll stop and we'll talk and like this is how you start a fire and what are the components of fire that you need, and oxygen and spark and fuel, and like we'll go through all these different things, and I'm like
Nice.
teaching them as we go through, and
Love that.
oh, can you imagine he got attacked by a moose? Do you know how big a moose is? And it's just like it's almost these things, these stories
Hmm.
that they learn. It just kind of instills in your kids like, oh, like I can do, like other people can do hard things, like I can do hard things too,
Yeah.
which is cool.
No, that's great, man. Love that. Let's see. I had some interesting thoughts though on common obstacles to mental resilience. So
Okay.
one is learned helplessness. Helplessness. So
Helplessness.
helplessness. Helplessness.
Helplessness. I
Yes.
think it's just oneness.
Yes. It's just a oneness of helplessness. Uh, it's so like, and it's learned helplessness because people are capable of doing a lot of things. If that guy was sitting on the side of Everest and he's just like, well, if I guess I just can't do it, so I'll just die here.
Or
I
he'll
can't
just
do it
sit
on
there
my
and yell,
own.
"Help!
Yeah.
Help!" It's like,
Yeah, exactly. No one's gonna save you, dude. You gotta save yourself. No one's coming. The cavalry's not coming. You're the cavalry. So I think that's a cool one. Perfectionism is also a obstacle. If you feel like you always have to get everything perfect, then nothing's ever going to be perfect, and so it's going to really hinder your progress. Or it'll be easy to just give up. Well, it's not perfect, so I'm just done. Uh, yeah, it's like you ever make pancakes for your kids, and there's like one tiny corner of the pancake that got like a little bit crispy, and they're like, you put it on their plate, and they're like, oh, I don't like this, and they just drop the whole thing on the floor, and you're like, what?
you know what?
Now you're not getting breakfast, son.
You know what? No, I have not. I have not had that experience. Luckily,
Yeah, I've had that a couple times, many times actually, with my kiddos. Some of my kiddos.
you
But
got to
we're
learn.
learning,
You got to learn to improve your pancake game, I guess.
or maybe I just burn every single one, and then they just learn resilience. Maybe I'll do that. The next one is isolation. One of the pillars that I was going to talk about earlier, but I think this is a good time to talk about, is like having community around you is really going to help you with that mental resilience. So isolating yourself makes
Yeah.
it real tough. That's why a lot of people had a lot of struggles during COVID, which our podcast was born out of COVID.
Oh yeah,
2020, inception.
without
It's-
masks.
That's right. And so we started building this community out of that isolation. And so that's another one. And then chronically stressing yourself without recovery. Think about a bow. If you leave your bow strung at all times, the bow will lose its spring. So just like if you are never getting any rest, recovery is just as important as being resilient. So knowing how to recover, knowing how to mentally deload. Just like it's sometimes it's more obvious with physical things, like you need a recovery day, or you're pushing it too hard, or your body's exhausted, or you need to rehydrate, or you need to rest, you need to get good sleep. That's easy to understand from the body's perspective, but from a mental perspective, sometimes we don't realize that, and that's where you get people that get burnt out, or just depressed, or really anxious all the time. And so doing mindfulness, doing kind of just taking a moment to go out in the woods, or just go to your special spot, whatever that is, to decompress, and teaching your kids how to do that when they get all wound up, or go to jiu-jitsu and rip someone's neck off. Sometimes I do that. That could be my special spot. It's just joking someone out within an inch of their life, and then they're like, oh, that feels better actually.
Yeah.
So there are different ways to relieve those pressure valves in life. So, any last parting suggestions or call to actions here, Ethan, on how people can be resilient?
Yeah, the last thing that I'll say, and I've mentioned this before. I think one of the ways that you can become more resilient is being in situations where resilience is required. And some people might call it, just doing hard things. I've heard some people call it exposure therapy, right? Like exposing yourself purposefully to, it could be anything from like a cold plunge to, a super hot shower, sitting in the sauna, right? At 200 and something degrees, right? It's just like,
200 degrees. That's a hot sauna.
I'm just saying, I mean, some people do it.
Yeah,
I think the Swedish people, I think it was like 215 is like one of the hottest that it's like been.
That'd be brutal, man. I get in at like, my sauna goes up to about 150, 160, and that's freaking hot. Maybe they're not in 215 for like 20 minutes though.
No, I don't think so. But just doing things that will force you to find that resilience. Just like you said, about the quote with the smooth seas never made a skilled sailor. It's, you gotta put yourself out there, be willing to fail, and overcome. And so that's what my challenge would be, is get out of your comfort zone, put yourself in situations where resilience is required, and see how you do. It might be super, super difficult the first couple times, but see if you can drive past that. If you can get past it and, get better. So that would be my challenge.
Microdose pain.
Yeah.
That's like, remember when he says, you got a prediction for the fight?
What's your prediction for the fight?
Pain.
Pain, yeah. Mr. Clubber Lang, Mr. T.
Rocky 3.
Yep.
That one's kind of underrated, but it's pretty good.
It is, yeah. My favorite part of that whole movie is whenever Paulie gets arrested at the very beginning, because he's like upset at Rocky because Rocky's making all this money and all that kind of stuff and super rich. And he throws a whiskey bottle at a Rocky pinball machine and gets arrested for vandalism. And then Rocky goes to the prison to pick him up and picks him up from jail. And they're walking out in the parking lot or the parking garage to Rocky's car. And Paulie's giving him a hard time. And Rocky's like, what's your problem? And Paulie just like blows up on him. And he's like, he's like, yeah, you have all this money or whatever else. And Rocky goes, what about that watch? And he gave him like this super nice Rolex watch. And Paulie takes it off and he slams it on the ground. He goes, I don't care about that X-Lax watch. He calls it an X-Lax watch instead of Rolex watch. It's friggin' hilarious. I laugh out loud every time I see that part.
Oh man. Well, talk about a movie about resilience. Rocky's one of the, going the distance, right? So, well, this has been a great episode. Look forward to our next one. We're talking about physical resilience and how we can foster that within ourselves and within our kiddos. So our challenge to you is to microdose resilience, microdose pain in your life, and model it for your kids and help do it with them too. Microdose pain to your kids so that they can become resilient. You ask my kids when I'm asking them to help me mow the lawn and do stuff around the yard, man, you'd think I'm torturing them. No, man. Some of them are getting the hint and they just like go along with it. All right, Dad. All right. And do you need anything else, Dad? Some of them haven't quite gotten the hint yet, but so I just microdose more pain. It's like, well, now we got to mow more lawn. We got more weeds to cut. So we're working through it. We're not perfect dads, but we're trying to be better dads. We're trying to be the best dads we can be. And that's what our community and our creed and our brother's creed is about. So thank you for listening. And for those out there, let's build our creed together.
All right, let's do it.